A very good evening. A very good evening to you, believing that you had a good day. My name is Frederick Muitidiri. My sign language interpreter tonight is Tracy Dorcas. Karibu sana to Breaking Today. But first, the highlights.
Wameletwa hapa na kazi yao ni kuanza kupatia wananchi pesa na kuwashawishi ya kwamba wapige kura kinyume na vile wanavyotaka.
Chaos marred the Msambweni by-elections as reports of police officers being transferred at night rocked the elections pitting two major candidates.
After AMISOM progressively will withdraw as the problem is being solved and the situation in the ground will allow it.
Kenya to open its consulate in Hargeisa, Somaliland, few hours after Somalia broke its diplomatic ties with Kenya. And desert locusts invade three counties of Wajir, Garissa and Taita Taveta, devastating thousands of farmers. All right, welcome to the broadcast. You can talk to us via SMS line that is on 111 444 111. And you can tell me where you're watching this broadcast from. Now we are starting from Msambweni, where counting of votes have started in Msambweni constituency after a day full of drama between allies of independent candidate Faisal Bada and ODM's Omar Boga. This comes after reports of transfer of senior police officers in Msambweni, including the OCPD, who are being said to have been transferred barely a day before the by-elections under unclear circumstances. Majibu Kitsao reports.
Chaos, near fist fights. This is a by-election that has turned two camps into fierce political enemies. Supporters of ODM's Omar Boga and supporters of Faisal Bader had a day unto themselves. Leaders allied to Deputy President William Ruto claiming that former Machakos Senator Johnston Muthama, together with 25 agents allied to Faisal Bader in the ongoing Msambweni by-elections, had been arrested. Muthama and other leaders were monitoring the ongoing voting exercise at Kenyatta Primary School in Msambweni before attracting a crowd. The agents who appeared before Senior Magistrate Sandra Ogot at Kinondoni LOCUST were later released on a fine of 1,000 Kenya shillings each. The police then blocked the former legislator and detained him in a room before taking him to KPA police station. There were also confrontations between Mvita Member of Parliament Abdul Somad Sharif and Nyali Member of Parliament Muhammad Ali at ODM candidate Omar Boga's home area in Moroni Primary School in Ukunda. The results will be tallied tonight. Majibu Kitsao for Switch TV.
Now, I'll be bringing you a story about Somalia and the diplomatic ties that broke earlier this morning at 1 a.m. between Kenya and Somalia. I'll be bringing you that story in a short while. But meanwhile, having severe ties with Kenya, Somalia seemingly done completely with Kenya. Amani National Congress leader Musalia Mudavadi says the two countries need to find a common ground in solving their issues.
The reality is that our duty must always to defend Kenya's interests first as a people. And since Somalia lost its first president through the coup, Siad Barre, we have had challenges for all these years. And there are also so many factions in Somalia. Whether you'd be talking of Somaliland or you'd be talking of the Jubaland, the upper side, and there are very many interests. And then their constitutional framework is very different from ours.
Now, to some quite sad news is that the country is set to experience a dangerous third wave of locust invasion. The locusts, just like in the first and second waves, are originating from neighboring countries and have entered the country through its borders. The destructive locust pose a big threat to the country's food security. And our very own Robert Ouma reports the government is monitoring the situation and has already deployed aircrafts to limit further infestation.
Kenya is not yet out of the woods as the country is expected to face the second wave of desert locust. This is the warning by the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization. The first wave hit the country earlier this year, leaving a trail of destruction, particularly worsening food insecurity in some parts of the country.
If left unchecked in our country, the locusts have the potential to undermine our food security. And therefore, as government, we are keenly monitoring the situation and have deployed necessary interventions to limit further infestation and spread to neighboring counties.
Kilifi, Mandera, Marsabit, Taita Taveta, Wajir and some parts of Lamu County has become an hotspot for these insects. According to the government spokesperson, retired Colonel Cyrus OGUNA, the country may experience advanced food shortage, losing to the dangerous wave ahead.
The government has also deployed aircraft to be able to help in fighting the locust. There are 4 aircraft currently that are helping out in combating these pests. Now these 4 are, we have got 2 surveillance aircraft and 2 spray aircraft. Now they have been deployed as follows. Surveillance aircraft is in Garissa base, and it is covering Garissa, Wajir, and Mandera counties. Surveillance aircraft is in Lamu, another surveillance aircraft is in Lamu, covering the coastal region.
Almost 25 million people suffered the wrath of the severe first wave, but this time the country is not yet certain of how many people shall survive with the confirmed second wave. However, the country has promised hope with the deployment of necessary strategies to curb the infection. Robert Uma, Switch TV, Nairobi.
Well, this has been that year, from COVID-19 to desert locust, first, second and third invasion. What a year this has been. Now, back to a story I told you earlier on, where tension is now rising in Mandera County, with some residents being forced to leave their homes after Somalia National Army troops were spotted taking positions along the border a day after Somalia made an announcement cutting its diplomatic ties with Kenya, and Kenya making new agreements with Somaliland, including opening a consulate in Hargeisa. Our reporter David Kagina with more.
Hours after a fallout between Kenya and Somalia after what the Somali's Minister for Information Osman Dubi termed as constant interference with the country's internal affairs and undermining of the country's sovereignty, tension is now rising along the common border. Residents have reported seeing Somalian National Army troops taking strategic positions along the Kenya-Somalia border. The move, including placing technical vehicles at the border point 3, has forced locals to start leaving their homes. Somalia has announced that it will in the next 7 days withdraw all its diplomats from Kenya, with the Kenyan government responding saying it will not retaliate.
So there is a committee that has been put in place to be able to look at those issues that are, coming in between these 2 neighboring countries that have got a lot of, history between the 2 of them to be addressed.
While this unfolded, President Kenyatta invited President of Somaliland Musa Bihi Abdi to Kenya, making several bilateral agreements, chief among them opening a consulate in Hargeisa in Somaliland, a move seen as a direct violation to Somalia's sovereignty. The 2 presidents have agreed on a plan to have direct flights with the Kenya Airways and other Kenyan airlines between Nairobi and Hargeisa by the end of March 2021. Citizens of the 2 nations will apply for a visa and receive visa on arrival by end of March 2021. The 2 nations have agreed on implementing of exchange programs involving students, agricultural officers, doctors, nurses and other professionals. Early in the year, Kenyan's expert preempted the fallout, pointing fingers to Somalia's President Mohamed Farmajo.
President Farmajo has almost vowed in his heart that he will never have peace with Kenya. This is a president who is insulting the blood of our sons and daughters who have died in El Ade and other points in Somalia, trying to liberate that country from terrorism and from terrorists from Al-Shabaab, and telling people, trying to tell the people of his country that Kenya is interfering with their sovereignty. How do you tell someone who came to help you stand? This Farmajo would never find election if Kenya didn't do what they did.
The 2 cases have already been filed in court by Somalia, one of them International Court of Justice over territorial dispute concerning the maritime delimitation. David Kagina, Switch TV.
Thank you, David. Now, even as the nurses and clinicians enter day 9 of their strike, The government is still adamant about its provision of the best working conditions for the frontline health workers. This is a day after clinicians and nurses protested over the poor working conditions at the Health Ministry headquarters. Namukana Samuel reports.
The Cold War between the government and the medical professionals seems to be far from over, as the government claims it has provided the best working conditions for the frontline workers.
The most significant effort in the investment in healthcare is in the investment on healthcare workers. They are the single most important factor in the whole framework of response, for without them, no healthcare system can be able to function.
According to government spokesman, retired Major General Cyrus OGUNA, the government has provided personal protective equipment, PPEs, and a comprehensive health cover to all healthcare frontline workers.
The government introduced a COVID-19 risk allowance package to all healthcare workers to improve their welfare. To date, over 3 billion shillings has been paid out to the healthcare workers.
And even for our healthcare workers, we are pleading that they understand the situation as government tries to do much more.
This is contrary to what the healthcare professionals are lamenting about.
That until the government of this nation addresses and meets our demands, the health workers, the nurses, the clinical officers will never set their feet back to work.
OGUNA has blamed the healthcare workers for holding the government ransom. The government spokesman claims that no amount of preparation could control this pandemic, as it has proved to defeat the best healthcare systems in the world.
If you really love your parents, do not visit them during this period of Christmas, because the situation is real out there. COVID is real.
During a press briefing at the KICC, the retired general urged Kenyans not to travel up country to curtail the spread of COVID-19.
It seems the war between healthcare workers and the government is still far from over, as the government remains firm that the healthcare workers have been provided with all they need. Namukana Samuel, Switch TV, Nairobi.
Thank you, Namukana. And with that story, we are taking a short break. Talk to us via SMS line, that is on 111 444 111. We are also live on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube at Switch TV News. Karibu sana, we'll be back with more. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Moving on, President Uhuru Kenyatta has today drummed up support for the BBI document among women, emphasizing that it proposes significant gains for them. The president was speaking during the virtual MAENDELEO ya WANAWAKE annual general meeting. He also launched the organization's national water harvesting project, noted that Maitu has grown to become a bastion of civil society, championing initiatives that have tremendously changed women's lives for the better, especially at the grassroots level.
You, my dear sisters, mothers, and all women of Kenya, to unequivocally and emphatically support BBI. In BBI, women also gain directly and indirectly through the gains secured for the youth, for persons with disabilities, for enhanced health care and economic opportunities, and for a more stable and peaceful electoral system and environment.
Today was a big day for the Foreign Press Association, where it was launched today. And speaking during the launch of the Foreign Press Association of Africa, Musa Faki Mahamat, the chair African Union Commission, has reiterated that the pivotal role played by journalists in opening up Africa to the rest of the world is important, as Lillian Minor is reporting.
Today marked the turning point for foreign journalists working in Africa as they launched the first ever association that will bring together all journalists working for foreign media houses, including but not limited to BBC, CGTN, formerly CCTV, Voice of America, DW, AFP, Al Jazeera, France 24, and Reuters.
It was important that we begin out telling the African story because we have our own traditions.
For the longest time, the portrayal and narration of African stories has been viewed in the negative light, with many of the stories being said to be too graphic, explicit, and disturbing, without projection of the good that saturates the African continent, a narrative that is about to change.
Emphasizing the contributions of Africans themselves to their development and their search for solution to their problems.
Several key issues highlighted during the launch include the safety and welfare of journalists, hits and misses, opportunities and potential challenges facing journalists, covering Africa for foreign media, with the challenge of accreditation taking center stage.
The foreign media that hire locals to cover the news from the ground, they do a better job because they get the local perspective and insight.
The association, which draws membership of journalists from East, West, and South Africa, is guided by the firm belief in credible and impartial journalism that deeply affects the voices, desires, and aspirations of all foreign journalists covering Africa from the diaspora.
This is a youthful continent, and this is a group of people driving the agenda for the future of the continent.
This is the force behind the constitution of the association, whose primary objective is to change the manner in which African stories are told to the rest of the world. The launch of the Foreign Press Association of Africa has now paved way for journalists to tell African stories from an African perspective. Lillian Minor, Switch TV, Nairobi.
Thank you, Lillian. And 17 students in Mbwinzao Secondary School in Msambweni County are among the latest cases of schools-going children who have contracted coronavirus. According to the latest data from the Ministry of Health, more than 404 cases have been recorded today, a drop from yesterday's lowest cases after months of rising infections. This comes at a time when the government is planning on acquiring 24 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine. Joan Kutuni, I beg your pardon, with the details.
The government has allocated 10 billion shillings to COVID vaccine meant to acquire 24 million doses to be rolled out to 24% of the Kenyan population. The Ministry of Health submitted its order to the Global Vaccine Alliance Gavi last week for 24 million doses, with each dose estimated to cost 320 shillings. The priority in the list are the first groups to be vaccinated are the frontline workers, followed by those with underlying conditions and the older population. Currently, the COVID-19 cases stands at 92,459, with 404 new infections reported today from the 4,878 samples. What is worrying is the rise in curve of the infected students, with Boizao Secondary School being the latest school, with 17 new cases just weeks to January when schools are scheduled to reopen. Kenya has seen a number of healthcare workers continue to succumb to the virus. If the rollout of vaccine commences, lives will be saved and normalcy may return. Reporting for Switch TV, my name is Joan Kutuny.
Thank you, Joanne. Said Joshua earlier on. My goodness. Cases of gender-based violence have been on the rise. A study by Wango Kanja Foundation has revealed that since the outbreak of COVID-19, at least 1,022 cases have been recorded, 79.1% being female, while 20.9% are male. Maluse Meshak with more details.
According to a study done by Wango Kanja Foundation, a gender-based violence organization, 4.3% of the violence is done in public, 6.8% by unspecified assailants, 8.2% using weapons, and 90.2% by single assailants. Victim profiles indicate that out of 584 cases recorded, 35% are men, 29% are women, 13% boyfriends, 9% neighbors, ex-partners are 6%, 4% are relatives, while 2 are strangers. During this coronavirus pandemic period, statistics from a research, cases recorded by age increased this year compared to last year. Between the age of 0 to 10, 34 cases have been recorded. Between 60 and 62 people of the age 19 to 35 years at least have recorded a case each. Cases of people aged 36 years and above are minimal, with 5 to 25 people having reported a case each. The number of those who send an SMS to report gender-based violence cases this year has risen, according to the study by Wango Kanja Foundation. 0 to 10 years have reported 5 cases each, and the age between 11 to 46 have recorded an average number of 255 cases. The number of total cases received this year is averagely 1,053.
To address an issue is using already existing mechanisms in place and not building parallel support mechanisms. So that way it becomes easier to have a bigger impact, but also using less resources.
In the study, those who sent an SMS to the police station between 2019 and 2020 has reduced from 34 to 21 compared to those who walked in to report the matter. 39 people reported the case last year compared to this year, where the cases have risen to 82. A number of those who recorded the statement at chief's camps have increased this year, with a total number of 12 people reporting of violation.
Jinsia inaathiri kila mtu katika jamii, sio tu wanawake peke yake, bali wanawake, wanaume pamoja na watoto wanaathirika.
I appreciate all the gender defenders who in one way or another.
This year alone, the number of those who have been sexually violated are 92 people. 71 people have either been domestically violated, 16 people have been physically violated, and the rest are 74 whose cases are unspecified. A total number of 1,022 cases have been captured from the 3 spectra of reporting and are categorized either as sexual violence, domestic violence, physical abuse, or others, which include cases of child maintenance, neglect, and property inheritance. Maluse Meshak, Switch TV, Nairobi.
All right, we have you covered on the latest from the world of business. Good evening and welcome. My name is Clifford Ndubi. Now, Kenya risks more people losing their jobs if it cannot restructure its loans. That is according to ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi. The crisis brought about by the COVID-19 has already seen close to 2 million Kenyans losing their employment, where the situation may be detrimental if not controlled by the government through loans renegotiation.
If we don't, then we come across painful situations. And you saw the IMF beginning to indicate that if we are not careful, retrenchment is on the way. So already people have lost their jobs because of a shrinking economy, a weak economy. And then now, if you're not careful and if our expenditure arrangements are not realigned properly, we will have no option but to retrench. So more people might lose jobs. Yeah.
Now, away from that, a Kenyan family of a victim of the 2019 Ethiopian air crash has agreed to settlement of $327 million to drop a court case against American aircraft maker Boeing. This is the first settlement in a case by Rebecca Law Chartered, which sued Boeing for $109 billion on behalf of some families who lost their loved ones in the Ethiopian Airlines 737 MAX 2019 crash that killed all 149 people on board. Sazamunga tells us more.
The U.S. law firm held a dozen of suits against the aircraft maker in a U.S. federal court in Chicago in the aftermath of two fatal crashes involving the same Boeing model plane. Some of the Rebecca Law Charter's remaining cases from the Boeing 737 MAX 8 crash of Lion Air Flight 610 that have not reached settlement with the tried in the U.S. or Indonesia. If tried in the Indonesia, a criminal case against Boeing's officers and its board of directors will be filed. The Nairobi-bound flight crashed shortly after takeoff from Addis Ababa's Bole International Airport, killing 149 on board, including 32 Kenyans, 18 Canadians, 9 Ethiopians, 8 Italians, 8 Chinese, 8 Americans, 7 Britons, 7 French citizens, 6 Egyptians, 5 Germans, 4 Indians, and 4 people from Slovakia. Another plane of the same model was involved in a crash less than 5 months earlier, with a Lion Air flight crashed into the sea near Indonesia with nearly 190 people on board. Serious failures. The final report on the Boeing 737 MAX, released in September by a legislative committee in the United States, found a repeated and serious failures by Boeing and identified the key factors that contributed to the Boeing 737 MAX crash, including design flaws, profit and production priorities at the expense of safety. The report laid out disturbing revelations about how Boeing, under pressure to compete with the Airbus and deliver profits for the Wall Street, escaped scrutiny from the FAA, withheld critical information from pilots, and ultimately put planes into service that killed 346 innocent people in 2 crashes. Sazamunga, Switch TV, Nairobi.
All right, that story by Sazamunga brings us to the end of our business news of the day. Up next is the sports news. Frederick Mutiri, please take it away.
Thank you, Clifford. We start off with athletics, where Kenya Athletics governing body, Athletics Kenya, has celebrated 70 years of existence since its inception in a colorful event held today at Nyayo Stadium. The event was graced by Cabinet Secretary for Sports, Heritage and Culture, Amina Mohammed, and Uasin Gishu Governor Jackson Mandago, who hails from an area home to notable athletes. Kenya's pioneer athletes were among those who honored the event. Ivy Kavai narrates.
Governor Mandagao has commended the Ministry of Sports and Athletics Kenya for recognizing Kenyans who have brought honor through sports, adding that the county governments from Rift Valley are investing in sports, with his county government particularly setting aside 1.2 billion shillings for a stadium that he hopes to see world records set in.
We are not only celebrating what we have in the current, but we are also looking into the future. And into the future, as county governments of the region, we are investing in sports facilities with the hope that not so long into the future, we should be able to host international events in the country.
2016 Olympic silver medalist Helen Obiri also celebrated Athletics Kenya for the good gesture of honoring track heroes, saying it motivates the correct crop of athletes to continue doing better.
And with the mark like 70 years in athletics, it gives us opportunity to celebrate and maybe to recognize the retired athlete and the upcoming athletes and the current athletes. So it's very good example for me to work hard, maybe to be like role model when I retire.
On his part, marathoner Kibiwot Kandi admitted that COVID-19 has had a negative impact on athletes, but remains hopeful that 2021 will see things turn back to normal, with the main focus being on the postponed 2021 Olympics.
2020 has been a very tough year because the COVID pandemic has arisen very early at the year, and it disrupted all the calendar, every program, and athletes actually they suffered a lot. And the coming 2021, we are hoping for good that we have to get a lot of races. Actually, we are focusing now to attend the Olympics Games and major big championships, of which we will raise the Kenyan flag.
Ivy Kovai, Switch TV News.
Thank you, Ivy, and my director is telling me that my time is up. And just to remind you, tonight at 9 p.m., Chelsea will be facing Wolves at their hometown. All right, and Man City will be playing West Brom. Have yourself a good night. My name is Frederick Muiterere. My sign language interpreter tonight was Tracy Darkup. See you tomorrow.